everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. So it has been a minute since I've had the time to film and upload a video, but this is a video that I have been wanting to upload for a while. I've recently come across a few items in jewelry lots and Goodwill blue boxes that really made me want to film this video. So if you're like me and you're a jewelry fan and you're somebody who purchases jewelry lots or Goodwill blue boxes, you may have run into a Tiffany item or two. And the hardest part about that is trying to authenticate your item. So that can be really, really challenging. So you can see that I have 5 different items laid out in front of me here. And 3 of these items are authentic Tiffany items that I purchased when I was an employee, so I have no doubt that these are authentic. And 2 of these items I found in either Goodwill blue boxes or other jewelry lots that I happened to purchase over the last few months. And I just thought this would be helpful to share how I authenticate pieces and sort of the red flags I look for on these items that help me determine whether they're a real Tiffany or not. So I really hope this helps you guys if you come across any of these pieces. I'm going to be focusing on the Return to Tiffany pieces. So all these items you see in front of us here, these are the Return to Tiffany collection items. And all of these items have the Please Return to Tiffany & Company New York stamping. And if you're not familiar, this all started based on key rings that Tiffany used to produce, and they each had individual serial numbers that were tied to the purchaser's phone number and address, so that if your keys were ever lost, they could be returned to Tiffany and then sent back to the original purchaser. You know, obviously today it's kind of unlikely that somebody will find your Tiffany keyring and turn it back in. So that's really no longer something that they practice, but they do have this entire line based around the Please Return to Tiffany stamping. It's one of the most iconic stampings from Tiffany & Company and definitely the most recognizable. So one of the questions I ask myself is, was this item ever actually sold or produced by Tiffany & Company? Is this design something they actually made? So looking at these items in front of us here, there's one item I can right off the bat tell you is not authentic purely because Tiffany never produced this design. And that is this earring here. So right away, I know that Tiffany never produced this type of drop earring with, you know, the heart tag charm and this circle piece around it. It's just not something Tiffany ever made. And obviously, being a former employee, that's something I would know, but it would be really hard to know for someone just coming across this item in a jewelry lot. So the next thing you want to take a look at is the actual details of the piece. When I look at this earring and I look at this circle piece kind of surrounding the heart tag there, one of the things I notice is that the shape is irregular. So it's not a perfect circle. You can see it's sort of crudely formed. It's just not up to the standards of a Tiffany item. So that's another indicator to me. And then the third thing is this ear wire up at the top. So the actual wire hook that the earring is on, it's really just kind of that standard hook that you find on costume jewelry and really most lower end jewelry pieces. So if this was an authentic Tiffany piece, you would expect that ear wire to also be branded with Tiffany & Company and just be, you know, something a little above that sort of standard hook design. So the next thing I want to talk about is the actual heart charm itself. So what if you found this heart charm not attached to this earring, just happened to be a charm with the Tiffany stamping, and it, you know, it looks pretty good if you're to look at it just kind of on its own and you're not super familiar with the brand. But I want you to take a close look at the logo here, and I'm going to grab a very similar item, and this is of course something from my own personal collection that I know is authentic, and that is this heart charm here, and that's a very similar size. I think this is essentially what this replica is trying to replicate, is this heart tag charm. So right away, if you look at the logo, pay attention to the placement of that logo on the piece. So when you look at this earring here, the Tiffany & Company is stretched all the way to the borders of the heart. And in fact, if you look closely, it is cut off. So Tiffany & Company always has that little dot after Co. It's kind of a shortened version of company. And here it's come so far to the edge that they can't couldn't fit the little dot in there, so that's actually cut off of this logo. So that's a big sign to me that this is not authentic. Tiffany is always going to center the logo, you know, to the best of their ability inside of a piece, so that it fits the item. You will see some subtle variations in the logos between pieces. For example, if I show you this oval tag charm, this is another item from my personal collection, you can see that there are some differences between the oval and the heart tag logo, mainly the way the please return to, this little line that's kind of placed on a curve. You can see that those are slightly different. On this oval charm, they have widened that curve so that it, you know, fits the horizontal elongated shape of this oval, while on the smaller heart tag, it's a tighter curve so that it fits better to the heart shape. So small little subtle changes are okay. You're going to see that across different pieces, but something you really want to pay attention to is the actual shape and proportion of the letters within the logo. So here you can see that the Tiffany & Company, the actual letters are pretty square in proportion, meaning that, you know, the length and the width of each letter are pretty similar. Next, we have these two heart tag charms here. So one of these I found in a jewelry lot, and the other one is from my own dog tag Tiffany necklace, which is that longer beaded chain that came with this heart tag piece. I think this one is a slightly better replica than the earring that we just looked at. And I think it might be a little bit harder to tell the authentic version here. But if you look closely at the logos and consider the proportion of the letters like we were just talking about, you can see that on this charm here, it looks as if the letters have actually been elongated vertically. So it looks like they've been stretched a little bit. On the authentic charm on this side, you can see that the letters are in that perfectly square proportion like we talked about. So that's a big signal. So that is definitely something to look out for. Another thing is the proportion of the please return to in comparison to the Tiffany & Company mark itself. So on the authentic pieces, let me grab maybe the smaller one too, just to kind of give you a third comparison here. You'll notice that the please return to is quite a bit smaller than the Tiffany & Company, the size of the font. When on this piece here, the please return to and the New York are pretty large in comparison to, you know, the authentic logos. The letters are just larger, it's just not the right proportion. Now, something that is a little harder to see, it's something that's a little more subtle, is the actual surface of the charm. And what I mean by that is if you take this authentic Tiffany charm, you can see that the silver is completely flat on the surface. Same with the edges of the piece. And then I want you to take a look at this charm, and it's kind of obvious when you see how the light reflects on it. Maybe it's hard to pick up on camera, but I think you can kind of see that the silver is sort of bubbling outwards here and in between kind of where each of the stamped letters are. It's not perfectly smooth, it's kind of bubbled out. And same with the edges, they're not flat. It kind of has this curved appearance to it. So that is something else to look for. And I think it's even more obvious on this earring. So you can see it's just, the best way for me to describe this is that it's kind of bubbled. So the edges are sort of rounded. The silver is, it's just not a completely flat surface on either of these pieces. And let me pull, yeah, if you look at it here, if you can see the way the light is reflecting on this piece, it's completely flat. Here you can see sort of the light is catching those curves. It's just not a smooth surface. There is some subtle but definitely visible kind of bubbling or curved shape to that. So that's something you'll see pretty often on replica pieces, is that, you know, Tiffany has kind of perfected their method of creating these charms and stamping them correctly so that the surface is completely smooth. Where here you can tell that, you know, once this charm was made and they stamped these letters in, it kind of pushed the rest of the silver up and created sort of this bubbled curved rounded effect. So that is another thing to look for sure. And then the last test, of course, is to test to make sure it is actually 925 sterling silver. So, you know, though that all of these are marked, this piece here is not sterling silver. I did acid test it. I believe this is silver plated. So obviously another test to help you authenticate an item is to make sure it's actually made out of the material that it is marked as. You know, it's pretty clear to me that these two items, this is meant to replicate this item, and this was meant to replicate this item. So I think they did a much better job on this one, but it's still pretty clear to me that this one is a replica. I do think it would be really, really hard to determine that if you found this piece, which is what happened to me. I found this in a jewelry lot just by itself without anything to compare it to. I think a lot of people could be fooled by this. I think it can be really hard to authenticate Tiffany items, and I'd often have clients come in asking if their piece was authentic, but the reality is that Tiffany will not authenticate an item for you. What I used to do is kind of what I'm showing you here. If somebody came in with this necklace here and they were questioning the authenticity, as an employee, I wasn't able to verify or tell them, you know, whether it was or was not, but what I would do is I would take them to the case and show them the authentic item so that they could compare it side by side and sort of draw their own conclusions, because a lot of the differences do become obvious when you have the items right next to each other. But yeah, there are a lot of really good fakes out on the secondhand pre-loved market, so you do really, really want to be careful. The reality is that the only way to know with 100% certainty that your item is authentic is to buy it directly from Tiffany & Company. But there's a lot of retired pieces and items that I look for pre-loved that are no longer sold in the stores. And so I just wanted to share the things that I look for and the red flags that tell me whether a piece is authentic or not. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions about anything I shared today. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.